Good evening. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Tuesday. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Yehud in South Carolina, Bella in Florida, Melissa in Great Neck, Lucy in Minnesota, Ezra in New Jersey. Welcome, Ezra. I think that's a new name. Chaim in Florida, Lester in Florida, Marie in Freeport, and Elise in Virginia, and Joe in the Inland Empire. Has the rain started for you? Just a drizzle, but I know it's coming. It's 100% tomorrow, 100% on Thursday. Reminder, tomorrow is the 24th, Wednesday, so we're going to be learning special time noon, the Friday schedule, noon Pacific tomorrow, the Friday schedule, noon Pacific tomorrow, Wednesday, and that's because of the Nittel Nacht tradition. You can look that up, but basically it was a dangerous time, Christmas Eve in medieval Europe, and sort of 1800s especially, and so there's a tradition that developed not to learn Torah on Christmas Eve. So we're going to learn at noon instead, and thank God that the primary danger to the Jewish people in 2025 is not from the Christian community. We have so many good friends and Israel supporters and allies of the Jewish people in the Christian community. And we certainly wish you a Merry Christmas if you're tuning in now. But that tradition remains. So probably if you are Christian and celebrating Christmas, you'd rather not be learning in a class Christmas Eve. So either way, it's good. But reminder, noon class, noon Pacific tomorrow, Wednesday. Thursday, we will be learning at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific, with God's help. And then Friday, we'll have the regular Friday schedule at noon. Today's episode of AT Daily is sponsored by Julie Frank. Beautiful dedication. In loving memory of Irvin and Sharna Frank, may their memories be for a blessing. Amen. May their memories be for a blessing. May they have an elevation in the world of souls. And Julie, thank you for enabling us to share more Torah with more people around the world. And the merit of that, may you and all your loved ones be showered in blessings. And we say amen. If you'd like to sponsor a show or just support our nonprofit, donate.accidentaltalmudist.org. 12:23. Okay. Our daf tonight is page 102, and we got a nice head start on it yesterday, so I anticipate an efficient class today. We're actually picking this up about, we really got a good head start, a little better than 2/3 down 102a. And we'll finish right at the end of 102b. Our daf is 102 here in Tractate Zevachim, the 29th volume of the Talmud, continuing our discussion of Mishna number 1, which with God's help we're going to complete tonight. Mishnah number 1 here in chapter 12. When is it that the priests who receive a share of the edible portions of a sin offering, when are they not permitted to eat of the sin offering or to receive that share? And we've been talking about a priest who is tameh, a priest who is blemished does receive, but if he's otherwise unfit, then can he receive, can he not? We're going to explore a little bit more about that right now. Right, tameh would be a reason why he can't participate in the service and cannot receive a share. A blemished priest cannot participate in the service. He can't sacrifice, right? He can't sprinkle the blood on the altar, but he does receive a share. So let's look more closely at that distinction. So the Mishnah teaches blemished priests, whether they are temporarily blemished or permanently blemished, receive a share and partake of offerings, but they do not sacrifice them. So the Gemara explains from where are these matters derived. As the sages taught in a Baraisa, the verse states with regard to the meal offering, right? The meal offering made from flour, sometimes baked, sometimes not. I think, or maybe I'm not sure if it's always baked or not, but mixed with some oil. And the sages taught in the Baraisa, the verse states with regard to the meal offering, every male among the sons of Aaron, that's the priests are, the sons of Aaron, shall eat it. Leviticus 6:11. And the phrase every male serves to include blemished priests. Now the Gemara clarifies, for what matter is this derivation necessary? If one suggests it is for the matter of consumption. Now we're making all these distinctions, right? If you look at what priests do they have to slaughter an animal offering? No, that a priest is not required for that. Is a priest required for collecting the blood of the soul of an animal offering, conveying it to the altar and sprinkling it there? Yes, that has to be done by a priest. Can a blemished priest do that? No, he cannot. Nor a tameh priest, nor a disqualified priest. Okay, so there's slaughter, there's collecting, conveying, and sprinkling the blood. Then we're at this stage where we're really talking about now is going to be eating the portions of the sin offering that are eaten, right? So those that can only be eaten by priests. But in this chapter, we've drawn an additional distinction. There's eating it, and there's receiving a share of the edible portion. And those are different because there's going to be certain people who don't receive a share but are permitted to eat from it. Whereas somebody who's tameh, not only does he not receive a share, he can't eat of it either. A priest has to be in a state of purity, ritual purity, tahara. He must be tahor, not tameh, when he's eating the meat of a sin offering. But who is permitted to eat of it and doesn't receive a share? That might be a minor, right? So receiving a share and eating of it are two distinct things, right? So so the Gemara clarifies, for what matter is this derivation necessary? If one suggests it is for the matter of consumption, right? Actually eating it. It is already stated explicitly, any man of the seed of Aaron the priest who has a blemish, he may eat the bread of his God, of the most sacred and of the sacred, right? The most sacred, those would be the offerings of the highest sanctity, like sin offerings. The sacred, that would be lesser sanctity, like peace offerings and thanks offerings, and Bechor and Pesach, etc. So rather, Leviticus 6:11 is necessary for the matter of receiving a share, teaching that blemished priests may do so along with other priests. They can't sacrifice the animal, right? Meaning bring the blood to the altar, but they may receive a share and, of course, eat of it. Now, it is taught in another baraisa that the verse states with regard to the sin offering, every male among the priests may eat thereof. That's Leviticus 6:22. Now, the phrase every male serves to include blemished priests. And the Gemara explains, for what matter is this derivation necessary? Didn't we already derive it? So if one suggests it is for the matter of consumption, well, we already stated that in Leviticus chapter 21. And if one suggests it is for the matter of receiving a share, we already derived that in Leviticus 6:11. So what's 6:22 for? Rather, the verse is necessary because one might have thought that I have derived only the law with regard to a priest who was at first unblemished and later became blemished, whether temporarily or permanently. From where is it derived that a priest who was blemished from birth also receives a share? And the verse states here, every male. That's why it's stated it 3 times to teach that all of these blemished priests get a share and may eat of it. It is taught in another baraisa, the verse states with regard to the guilt offering, every male among the priests may eat thereof. That's Leviticus 7:6. The phrase every male serves to include a blemished priest. The Gemara explains, so for what matter is this derivation necessary? If one suggests it is for the matter of eating, isn't that already stated? And if one suggests it is for the matter of receiving a share, isn't that already stated? And if one suggests it is for a priest blemished from birth, haven't we already stated that? So rather, the verse is necessary because one might have thought that I've derived only the law with regard to a permanently blemished priest. From where is it derived that a temporarily blemished priest also receives a share? The verse states here, every male. And the fact that it was stated with regard, this latest one, to a guilt offering, doesn't mean that, oh, well, we might have thought that applies to sin offerings but not to guilt offerings, because we've already derived earlier that what applies to the guilt offerings applies to the sin offerings in this regard. So that's why we now know blemished priests eat it, receive a share in it. Doesn't matter if they were blemished from birth. Doesn't matter if the blemish is permanent or temporary. Now, the Gemara objects, isn't it the opposite? Kela pelaya. Meaning, wouldn't I have thought that a priest with a permanent blemish would be treated more stringently than one with a temporary blemish? Rav Sheshes says, okay, so reverse the wording as follows. One might have thought that I've derived only the law with regard to a priest with a temporary blemish. From where is it derived that one with a permanent blemish also receives a share? That's why it's the fourth time. Rav Ashi said, no, actually do not reverse the wording. And this is not difficult. It was necessary to teach that even a priest with a temporary blemish receives a share, because it might enter your mind to say, and now we're on page 102b, that the law of this priest is like that of a ritually impure, a tameh priest. Just as the priest who is tameh may not partake as long as he is tameh, so too the priest with a temporary blemish may not partake as long as he is in the state of being blemished temporarily. You might have thought that. The verse therefore teaches us that he may receive a share even before his blemish heals. A blemish does not prevent the priest from partaking of the meat of the offerings of the highest sanctity, nor from receiving a share. It doesn't matter whether it's permanently or temporarily, and it doesn't matter whether he had it from birth or not. The Gemara, okay, new topic. The Mishna teaches, the principle is, any priest who is unfit for the service that day does not receive a share of the sacrificial meat. Wait, didn't we just learn something that contradicts that? And the Gemara objects, but doesn't he? Isn't there the blemished priest? We just learned he is unfit to participate in the service, and yet he receives a share. But doesn't he? Isn't there the blemished priest who is not fit for the service and who nevertheless receives a share of the meat, as the Mishna itself teaches? And furthermore, this principle indicates that only priests unfit for the service do not receive a share, but any priest who is fit for the service does receive a share. Well, a priest who is tameh, is he unfit or is he disqualified? Maybe it's a little different. But isn't there the case of the priest who is tameh, who with regard to offerings of the community is fit for the service, right? If the whole community is unfit, if the whole community is tameh, or if all the priests are tameh, then they may still bring communal offerings, though they do not bring individual offerings, the offerings of individuals, the sin offerings of individuals. But if all the priests are tameh, then they do bring the offerings of the community, right? The communal offerings, the daily offerings of the nation. So a priest who's tameh is still fit to bring communal offerings if all the priests are tameh. So you can't say that he is absolutely unfit. He is fit in that situation. So the Gemara answers that the Mishna is saying that any priest who is not fit for partaking of sacrificial meat does not receive a share. Right, the priest who is tameh, when he brings a communal offering, he will not be eating from it because he is tameh. So who receives a share? Only those who could possibly eat from it. So blemished priests may partake of sacrificial meat, and priests who are tameh may not. But the Gemara raises an objection. This indicates that any priest who is fit to partake may receive a share. And what's the exception to that? A minor, a priest, right, the son of a priest, but who is a minor. He is not yet old enough neither to participate in the service, nor to what? To receive a share, right? But isn't there the minor who is fit for eating it? He can eat. He's not tameh. He is the son of a priest, right? He's a future priest. So he may eat from the meat of sin offerings, but he may not receive his own share. So you can't say that receiving a share is dependent on being qualified to eat, since the minor can eat but doesn't receive a share. And the Gemara answers this inverse principle, that any priest who is fit to partake may receive a share, is not taught. We don't teach that principle. The Mishnah means to teach only that any priest who is unfit does not receive a share. So the Gemara notes, okay, well, now that you've arrived at this conclusion, that the Mishnah's statement only teaches what it says explicitly, one can say that the Mishnah actually means what the Gemara said at the outset, that no priest unfit for the service receives a share. If one raised an objection with regard to a tamei priest who is fit for the service of communal offerings, but does not receive a share, we can answer that the Mishnah does not teach that every fit priest, even an impure one, receives a share, only the inverse. And if you raise an objection with regard to a blemished priest who is unfit for the service but nevertheless receives a share, you can answer that the merciful one included him as an exception, an explicit exception, by the phrase every male as derived above. And it also said that the blemished priest may eat of the sacred, and that's why he's included. It's easy to derive where everywhere it says every male that will include the blemished priest. Now, new topic. The Mishnah teaches even if the priest was tamei, ritually impure, only at the time of the sprinkling of the blood of the offering, and yet he was pure by the time of the burning of the fats, he still does not receive a share of the meat. If he was tamei when the blood was presented, he won't be receiving a share of the edible portion, the meat of that offering. And the Gemara notes, consequently, one can infer that a priest who was pure at the time of the sprinkling of the blood, even one who is impure at the time of the burning of the fats, does receive a share. Wait. What? Let's read that again. Even if a priest was tamei at the time of the sprinkling of the offering, and he was pure at the time of the burning of the fats, he still does not receive a share of the meat. So the Gemara notes, so consequently one can infer that a priest who was pure at the time of the sprinkling of the blood, even one who was impure at the time of the burning of the fats, does receive a share. Am I going crazy? I'm going to do that again. Didn't he just say the opposite conclusions based on no change? Even if the priest was tamei at the time of the sprinkling of the blood of the offering, and he was tahor at the time of the burning of the fats, he still does not receive a share of the meat. So consequently, one can infer that a priest who was pure he was pure. Thank you. He was pure. He was tahor at the time of the sprinkling of the blood. Even if he was impure at the time of the burning of the fats, would receive a share, right? So that's the difference they're making. So if he was tamei when the blood was sprinkled, he's not going to get a share. But if he was tahor at the time that the blood was sprinkled, even if he became tamei when the fat was being burned on the altar, assuming that he's going to be pure again by the time the meat is eaten, sounds like he does get a share. The Gemara comments, the Mishnah is not in accordance with the opinion of Abba Shaul. As it is taught in a Baraisa, Abba Shaul says a priest never partakes, i.e. never receives a share, of sacrificial meat unless he is tahor at the time of the sprinkling until the time of the burning of the fats. As the verse states, he among the sons of Aaron who sacrifices the blood of the peace offerings and the fat shall have the right thigh for a portion. That's the edible portion that the priests get. That's Leviticus 7:33. So the verse requires that the priest be tahor, ritually pure, even at the time of the burning of the fats, right? He has to remain pure from the sprinkling of the blood through when the fats are burned on the altar. Sounds like then if he became tamei, but was tahor again when they're going to distribute the portions, sounds like he could then get that portion because he was tahor when the blood was sprinkled and still tahor when the fat was burned on the altar. Rav Ashi raised a dilemma. According to the opinion of Abba Shaul, in a case where the priest became tameh between the sprinkling of the blood and the burning of the fats, but he became pure again before the burning of the fats, then what is the law? He was pure when the blood was sprinkled, and he was pure when the fats were burned on the altar. But he became tameh and was purified in between. Does he receive a share? Do we require only that he be pure both at the time of the sprinkling and the time of the burning of the fats? And there is purity at those times. Or perhaps Abba Shaul meant that the priest may not receive a share of the meat unless he is pure from the time of sprinkling until the time of the burning of the fats, without interruption. What's the answer? We don't know. Teku, this dilemma shall stand unresolved. Next topic. The Mishna teaches that an impure priest who immersed that day. Okay, now we're talking about the Tevel Yom. Tevel Yom is somebody who was impure, he was tameh. And it's not the kind of tuma that's a 7-day purification like corpse tuma. Right, so this is, he came into contact with a creeping thing, for a dead creeping thing, a sheretz, like a dead mouse. So all he has to do is immerse, right? Immerse in a mikvah and wait for nightfall. Then he will be pure again at nightfall. So he has done the immersion, but it is not yet nightfall. That is called a Tevel Yom, awaiting the day, right? Awaiting nightfall. Awaiting the new day that begins at nightfall. So, the Mishnah teaches that the Tevel Yom, and likewise the oinen, right, the acute mourner, and one who has not yet brought an atonement offering, right? That is one whose purification, like one who's emerging from Naziris, for example, or one who's emerging from Tsaras, who not only needed to immerse and wait for nightfall, he also has to bring specific offerings to complete his purification the following day. Right? So the Tevel Yom, he has immersed, and when nightfall hits, he's pure. But the one who still has to bring an offering, he immersed, he has to wait for nightfall, then he's still not completely pure because he has to bring those offerings the next day. And before he brings those offerings, or in the Tevel Yom, before nightfall hits, they're not fully pure and they cannot eat the meat of a sin offering. So what about them? Let's see. So the Mishnah teaches that the Tevel Yom and the onen and the one who has not yet brought an atonement offering do not receive a share of sacrificial meat in order to partake of it in the evening, right? They can't eat it that night. They can't partake of it. They can't receive a share either. Rava says, I learned this law from Rabbi Lazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, who said in the bathroom, you can contend by way of a story that a priest who immersed that day, right, meaning the Tevel Yom, came and said to a priest who's fully pure and who was of the same patrilineal priestly family serving in the temple that day, right? In other words, they're part of the same mishmar, right? They're parts of the same family of priests, and they're serving in the holy temple for a week. They're serving together. But one of them became tameh, immersed, and he's waiting for nightfall. And the other one, never became tameh. He's still tahor. So the one who is the Tevel Yom is saying to the tahor. The Tevel Yom is saying to the tahor, who was apportioning sacrificial food, give me a share of a meal offering, right? The meal offering, the one made of, flour. And I will partake of it in the evening. He's saying, okay, I guess I can't eat the meat, but give me a piece of the meal offering because, I can't eat it now, but by the time night comes, I will be able to eat it. I'm Tevel Yom, I'm waiting for nightfall. So we're going to do this whole dialogue between the Tevel Yom and the Tahor priest. And the Tevel Yom is going to say, well, I've got all these arguments why, okay, I'm Tameh now, but I'll be Tahor tonight. So you can give me at least of the meal offering, if not perhaps even of the sin offering. And the Tahor is going to give him the reasons why, no, you don't get a share. Now, before we launch into that dialogue between the Tevel Yom and the Tahor, let's take a step back and say that Rava says, I learned this law from Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, who said in the bathroom. That here is a dialogue that can help us understand what the Tevel Yom can and can't eat. This is Torah, right? They're talking about who is qualified and who is not qualified to eat from an offering. Obviously, that's words of Torah. How could they be spoken in a bathroom? That is absolutely prohibited. We don't discuss matters of Torah in a bathroom. We don't discuss matters of Torah even if we're not in a bathroom, but we're in the presence of things that should be in bathrooms, like urine and feces. So actually in a bathroom, right, where there's the potential of these, disgusting things and also naked people, etc., or even your own nakedness, how could Torah be discussed? How could this whole dialogue that I'm now going to share with you, which is, it's not so short, how could Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, have mentioned these matters in a bathroom? That question will get answered at the end. So first, let's do the dialogue. Okay. So the Tevel Yom said, give me a share of the meal offering and I will eat it tonight when I am fully pure. So the Tahor, right? So it's the Tevel Yom and the Tahor. The one who immersed and is awaiting nightfall and the one who is pure. So just keep it straight. The Tevel Yom and the Tahor. So the Tevel Yom said to the Tahor, I have a kal v'chomer for why I should be allowed to eat, why I should be able to receive a share of the meal offering. So just as with regard to a matter where your right, you the Tahor, your right is superior, i.e. in the case of your own sin offering, a priest can always bring his own sin offering, to which you have a right even when your family is not serving in the temple. That's what always means. Right? He can't bring the offering if he is tameh, like he can't actually sacrifice it. But even a priest who is not serving in the temple that week, he can go to the temple anytime and bring his own sin offering. But he can only bring sin offerings on behalf of other members of the nation, a Yisrael, right, a regular Jew, when he's on duty, right, when he's serving in the temple that week. So, but his own, he can bring anytime. So that gives him an extra right because he's a priest. He can bring his own anytime. So just as with regard to a matter where your right is superior, in the case of your own sin offering, to which you have a right to bring even when you're not serving the temple, I can nevertheless deny you a share of the sin offering of a Yisrael because you immersed today. So I'm sorry, the Tahor is talking to the Tevel Yom. Right? He's saying to the Tevel Yom, listen, okay, you have a right to bring your own sin offering anytime. But when you're tameh, or even when you're Tevel Yom, right, you've immersed, but you're still waiting for nightfall, you cannot bring the offering of a Yisrael. Right? So even though you could bring your own, I can nevertheless deny you the share of a sin offering of a Yisrael because you immersed today. Is it not logical that with regard to a matter where your right is inferior, i.e. in the case of your own meal offering, as the meal offering of a priest is not eaten at all? The meal offering, which is a sin offering, right, of a poor Yisrael who brought a meal offering instead of an animal offering, that there is a portion of it that is eaten by the priests. But when a priest brings a meal offering, no priest eats of that. Right? So is it not logical that with regard to a matter where your right is inferior, i.e. in the case of your own meal offering, as the meal offering of a priest is not eaten at all, that I can deny you the share of the meal offering of a Yisrael? And the Tevel Yom responded to the Tahor by saying, well, but even if you can deny me a share of the sin offering of Yisrael on the day that I immersed, perhaps this is since, just as my right is superior in the case of my own sin offering, so too your right is superior in the case of your own sin offering. So if so, is it necessarily so that you can refuse me a share of the meal offering of a Yisrael, where just as my right is inferior, so too your right is inferior, as neither of us may eat from our own meal offering? And the Tahor responded that the verse states, and every meal offering that is baked in the oven and all that is dressed in the stewing pan and on the griddle shall be the priests that offer it. right? When we talk about meal offerings that are sin offering in the form of a meal offering, that the priest is going to get some of it to eat for himself, right? The Torah gives him that as a gift. But which priest gets from the meal offering? The one who brings it, right? And every meal offering that is baked in the oven and all that is dressed in the stewing pan or in the griddle shall be the priest's that offers it. Leviticus 7:9. So if you wish to receive a share of a meal offering, come, sacrifice and partake of one. That's a rhetorical question because since he's a Tevel Yom, Tameh, still awaiting nightfall, even though he immersed, he can't bring an offering. He can't bring a sacrifice to the altar. So the Tahor is saying to the Tevel Yom, okay, you want to put part of the meal offering? Bring an offering. You could do that tomorrow. You can't do it today. And so today, you're not going to get from my meal offering either. The Tevel Yom made another demand. He said, give me a share of the sin offering of a Yisrael, and I will partake of it in the evening when I am pure. The Tahor said to him, just as with regard to a matter where my right is inferior, i.e. in the case of my own meal offering which is not eaten, I can deny you a share of the meal offering of a Yisrael, as we just derived. So too, is it not logical that with regard to a matter where my right is superior, i.e. in the case of my own sin offering, to which I have a right even when my family is not serving the temple, that I can deny you a share of the sin offering of a Yisrael? And the Tevel Yom said to him, well, but if you can deny me a share of the meal offering of a Yisrael, where just as your right is inferior, so too my right is inferior, is it necessarily so that you can deny me a share of the sin offering of a Yisrael, where just as your right is superior in the case of your own sin offering, so too my right is superior in the case of my own sin offering? Now we're talking about animals. And the Tahor responded, the verse states with regard to the sin offering, the priest who effects atonement shall eat it. So if you wish to receive a share of a sin offering, come effect atonement, and then you can eat of one. And since he's a Tevel Yom, he can't bring the offering to the altar, and therefore he's not going to get a piece of it either. The Tevel Yom made a third demand and said to him, give me a share of the breast and thigh, the portions that priests receive of peace offering. Now we're not talking about a sin offering anymore. We're talking about a peace offering. Right, which is mostly eaten by its owner, but the breast and thigh go to the priest who brings the peace offering. He says, give me a share of the breast and thigh, and I will partake of it in the evening when, I'm no longer a Tevel Yom. Nightfall will have come, and I will be fully pure, and I could eat it then. So give me a share now. I'll eat it tonight. Tahor said to him, just as with regard to a matter where your right is superior, i.e. in the case of your own sin offering to which you have a right to its meat in its entirety, and yet I can deny you the share of a sin offering of Yisrael, as I explained previously, so too is it not logical that with regard to a matter where your right is inferior, i.e. in the case of a peace offering, of which you only have the right to a share of the breast and thigh, that I can deny you a share because you're a Tevel Yom? And the priest and the Tevel Yom responded, but if you can deny me a share of a sin offering, where my right is inferior with regard to my wives and my slaves, as a sin offering can be consumed only by male priests, is it necessarily so that you can deny me a share of the breast and thigh of a peace offering, where my right is superior with regard to my wives and slaves, who may also partake of them? Peace offerings, even the part that goes to the priest, can be shared with non-priests, at least of their household. And the Tahor priest responded, the verse states with regard to the peace offering, it shall belong to the priest that sprinkles the blood of the peace offerings against the altar. So if you want to partake of a peace offering, come, sprinkle its blood and partake of it. Since the Tevel Yom can't do that because he's not yet fit to serve inside the temple, neither is he going to receive a share for him to eat tonight. And the story concludes that the Tevel Yom left in disappointment with his Kal V'chomer inferences upon his head, as they did not help him at all. And along with him walked Anan Oinen, the acute mourner, right, one who lost his relative that day. And along with them walked the priest who has not yet brought his atonement offerings, which he won't be able to eat in these things until the next day. At least at Tevel Yom, he becomes fit that night. Right, and if somebody who received the share wants to share that food with him, he could eat it that night. But the one who still has to bring an atonement offering the next day to complete his purification, he can't even eat of somebody else's share that night. And I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. Rav Achai refutes this. He says, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, could have added to the contentions described in the story, let the Tevel Yom say to the Tahor, give me a share of a Bechor, and I will partake of it in the evening. Bechor, right? So that's the firstborn male, or if the firstborn is a male, of a female kosher animal. So the Bechor needs to be brought to Jerusalem, to Yerushalayim, when the temple is standing only. And that is sacrificed, and its meat belongs to the priests. As opposed to the animal tithe offering, which also, 1/10 of what's born that year needs to be brought to Yerushalayim. But once it's sacrificed, the owners eat it themselves. So that's similar to Meiser Sheni for produce. Okay. So he says, give me a share of the Bechor, and I will partake of it in the evening when I'm pure again. Now, perhaps it is because the Tahor could say to him, just as with regard to a sin offering, where my right is inferior with regard to my wives and my slaves, since it may be eaten only by male priests, and I can nevertheless deny you a share of the sin offering of a Yisrael, as I explained, so too is it not logical that with regard to a Bechor, where my right is superior because all of its meat is mine, as firstborn offerings are given to a specific priest, I can deny you a share of it. In other words, the Yisrael who brings a Bechor can choose which priest he gives it to. But the Tevel Yom priest could respond, but if you can deny me a share of a sin offering, where just as your right is inferior, so is my right inferior, is it necessarily so that you can deny me a right of a Bechor, where just as your right is superior, my right is superior? And the Tahor priest could respond. The verse says, with regard to a Bechor, you shall sprinkle their blood on the altar and shall make their fat smoke for an offering made by fire for a pleasing aroma to the Lord. And the flesh of them shall be yours. As the breast and as the thigh, it shall be yours. From Numbers 18, verses 17 and 18. So it's going to be the same argument. If you wish to receive a share in the meat of a Bechor, come, sprinkle its blood and partake of it. You can't do that because you're a Tevel Yom, so you're not going to get a share either. And the Gemara responds, but the other priest, the Tevel Yom, could refute this proof. Is it written, and the flesh of them shall be for the priest who sprinkles, as it is written with regard to the meal offering, the sin offering, and the peace offering? Rather, it is written, and the flesh of them shall be yours, indicating that it can be given to a priest other than the one who sacrificed it. This is why Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, did not include this exchange in his story. And the Gemara now finally returns to the question I asked you at the beginning of this conversation. The Gemara returns to Rava's statement that Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, taught this law in the bathroom. And how did Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, do this? But doesn't Rabbi Bar Chana say that Rabbi Yochanan says it is permitted to contemplate matters of Torah in all places except the bathhouse and the bathroom? Contemplate. Forget talk and teach. You're not even permitted to contemplate matters of Torah when you're in the bathroom. So how could he have taught this whole complicated dialogue to help us understand what the Tevel Yom is entitled to eat or not eat? And the Gemara answers, a case where the matter was involuntary is different. Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was so preoccupied by the issue that he taught it even when he was in the bathroom. Some say in the notes that what that means is like he couldn't help himself. He didn't even realize he was like on autopilot in terms of doing what he was doing in the bathroom, but his mind like just never stopped working that whole thing through, and he made a mistake. I mean, he shouldn't have been thinking matters of Torah while he was in the bathroom, but it just happened. It was involuntary. Does that mean that he actually then started speaking it aloud? I mean, if there were other sages there, they would have stopped him. right? So maybe what it means is, well, he taught it later, but he worked it out while he was in the bathroom. Some say, well, it was involuntary and it just came out of him before he even realized what was happening. And maybe the ones who were listening were also so engrossed in the topic that they didn't even realize they were in the bathroom. But the law still stands. Don't talk Torah in the bathroom. Don't think Torah in the bathroom. Save it for when you leave the bathroom. Okay. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 1 here in chapter 12. Tomorrow, as I already said, special time, noon Pacific. We'll continue with page 103. I believe there are no questions or comments, so that's... okay, I got one comment here from Bill. Late breaking. Now, in the good rabbi's defense, I've been known to compose parts of theology papers while shampooing my hair, so Lord knows I've been there. It's good, right? When we're so engrossed that we don't even realize where we are, what we're doing. It's good to be that involved, right, with matters of Torah. However, we shouldn't learn or teach or speak Torah in the bathroom. And probably we should be careful about doing it when we're driving. If we're that engrossed that we wouldn't even notice that we're in the bathroom, we should be a lot more present when we're driving. That's what I've got for us today. And with God's help, we're together again tomorrow, Wednesday, special time, noon Pacific. Have a great night.